Welcome back to another awesome training video. In today's session, you're going to be able to have the skill set, the knowledge on how to use your voice more effectively, never lose it, how to perform 8 shows a week without ever losing it. So without further ado, we are going to first off start with looking at the 3 main core principles of singing. Now, when you get this right and you train each area with great detail and master the understanding of these 3 core principles of singing, which is breath, space, and resonance. Once you master all them 3, you'll never need another vocal coach again. Not really selling myself here, am I? Which, again, if you watched any of the other videos, the reason why I create this content in between my sessions is very simple. To build some trust with yourself, to see how I work inside of the VCA with my members. Hopefully you like me. There's a little bit of a nurturing process going on here, 15-20 minutes of your time that you've invested into me to level up and gain some knowledge, wisdom for your career in musical theatre. So without further ado, let's just dive into, and again, just whilst I'm on that, somewhere on this page in the description form to quickly fill in a minute and a half of your time, a few basic questions, and hopefully we can sit down on a call to see if we can look to helping you in this career of musical theatre. All right, without further ado, let's dive straight into the iPad and get into the training. Alrighty, so today we are looking at the 3 core principles of singing. Number 1. Now, this is in no particular order. We're going to be looking at the breath. Now, foundational singing should always start from the ground up. Personally, just as a vocal coach, and after being doing it now for a lot of years, I've found that if the breath is off, then there is a knock-on effect to placement, and which is space, and then moves it into resonance as well. So a little bit of a domino effect. So I like to always start personally with the breath. Now, breath can be found in and around the body. Now, do you breathe into your diaphragm? Do you breathe into your back? Do you breathe into your intercostal muscles? And another thing that a lot of people, or if somebody sends me a tape of them singing, and I notice there's a little bit of shakiness, or there is a little bit of guessing between placements from your head voice and chest voice, and you get that crack and stuff, usually it is because of the breath. It's not all the time, it doesn't happen all the time, but usually I'll go back to that. And I want you to think about the breath being like, imagine blowing through a straw. It wants to remain consistent and constant. It's not. And you'll find that when you sing a really high phrase or a big phrase or even a long phrase, and you'll find yourself going into default, taking a huge in-breath and expelling all of the air in the first couple of seconds of that phrase or that note, and it's driving the air. Or you could be doing a really long high note, and you'll find that your voice is kind of having little peaks and troughs. You're driving air, you're pulling back. And the issue with this is the breath, and your support, your intercostal muscles, and how you support that breath and how you support the breath to the sound itself. It's like little speed bumps in the road, kind of jumping over these little hills. So as a really, really basic exercise, just breathing in for 4, imagining you're breathing out through a straw, breathing in for 4, and breathing out to an F sound to a count of 8. Hold at the bottom for 4 without taking the in-breath. Take another replenished breath for 4. Same thing again for 8. And then just build that up to 16, 20, 30, 40, and just see how long you can stretch that. But a couple of things to be mindful of when you are doing this breath work. It feels nice, but rather than it just being a mindful thing, we really want to be engaging our core and our intercostal muscles. So I want you to imagine your diaphragm being like a balloon that is half full. You blow it up a little bit, and when you squeeze it, there is a little bit of tension here when you're squeezing it. And at the top here, it's like the little part of the balloon where the air escapes, and it's a smaller space. So what I want you to do is engage your core and your intercostal muscles, which are the muscles between your rib cage. So there's a little bit of tension here. Most people, and a lot of people, think that tension is bad for the voice, but if you use it in the correct way, it can really serve your voice. So engaging your core, engaging your intercostal muscles, breathing in for 4, try it. And breathing in, 2, 3, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and hold. 2, 3, 4, breathing in. 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you get the idea. They're really starting to fill up some space in and around the body there, opening up those intercostal muscles, engaging our core. Yeah, and this is, again, a very, very basic breath work exercise. Let me just jump back into the iPad. So breath. So the next thing we're going to be looking at is space. Now, space. To give you a piece of imagery and give you a little bit of a visual, I want you to think of the inside of your mouth being like the inside of St. Paul's Cathedral, a huge cathedral. It can be any cathedral in the world, but we're just going to use St. Paul's Cathedral for this example. If I or you were to go into a cathedral, St. Paul's, and belt, sing, yell, call out, you're going to get this wonderful acoustic, this 3-dimensional sound of these lovely tones that are bouncing off all of the walls, and you're just going to get this wonderful resonance in the room, right? Now, if you were to do the same thing in this office or in a small room or a shed or something like that, or in your bedroom, you don't get those acoustics. You get that one-dimensional, tinny, dull, really flat sound, right? So that's what's going on in the mouth as well. So what we want to be doing is creating this huge vortex of space. And when we create that vortex of space in the mouth, we get that more 2-, 3-dimensional sound. We don't want to be shortchanging. Now, how do we achieve that? So there are a couple of variables and factors that we have to take into account, and things that do hinder us from creating that 3-dimensional sound and, showcasing our voice to its true potential. And again, in no particular order, because they're all connected, we're just going to start with the tongue. Yeah, the tongue is a huge muscle in the mouth. Yeah, so as a general rule of thumb, keeping the blade of the tongue, which is the tip of the tongue, behind the bottom teeth at all times, or where you can. Now, what that's going to do is going to drive the tongue forward, and again, get out of the way of the back of the throat, creating more space. Now, we can go one step further with that. We can then look at what the larynx is doing. Now, I'm just going to dive back into the iPad for a couple of drawings here. I draw like a 5-year-old, so apologies for that. I want you to imagine this is one of those old mics. You know those old mics that like Elvis Presley and even like Frank Sinatra and those guys used, where it was like, not like this mic, a mic that suspended and it kind of moved up and down. It was attached to, it was just kind of moving around. I always use this as a visual when it comes to the larynx. Now, generally, as we get higher, the larynx moves up, and as we get lower, the larynx goes down. But we, without creating any sound, can manipulate the positioning of our larynx. Now, generally, our larynx usually sits a little bit higher than midpoint. So we're just going to use it there. This is our midpoint. So this is our midpoint. This is kind of where it kind of likes to sit. It's just a little bit higher. So what I like to do is talk about larynx depression. Yeah? Larynx is very, very depressed. We need to get this larynx out of depression. We don't. But we actually need to depress the larynx ever so slightly. And we can achieve that doing a number of things. A lot of people talk about singing on the edge of a yawn. You probably heard that. I personally don't like to get people to do that just because I feel like it shifts the tonal quality of your voice. You can start singing like this and start speaking like this. It does get that larynx depression and that space that we're looking for. But you've all heard of Joe Still, and she talks about crying. A quick story time with Joe Still, which have really resonated with me and really landed with me. When Joe Still is a singing pioneer who's very, very famous in the world of voice. And I love her work. I do. And I love a lot of her work. And I use a lot of her work. I don't use all of it, but I use specifically this part of her pedagogy and her teachings. So, quick story time. Joe Still's mum took Joe to the opera when she was younger, and she didn't want to go. She really didn't want to go. And the soprano got to the end of her song, or almost at the end of her song, and Joe turns to her mum and says, "Mum, why is she crying?" I don't know what accent she was doing, but why is she crying? That was the question she asked. Why is she crying? She's like, the mum was like, she's not crying. It sounds like she's crying. And from there, the tilt, the vocal tilt, which we know of today, mixed voice, having that covered sound, and having cry in the voice is where it all started for Joe. And I think it's having a little touch of cry in the voice. What that does is, rather than doing it at the edge of a yawn, so it's quite aggressive, having that little bit of a cry. And I always say this: imagine somebody said something that has really hurt your feelings. It's just ever so slightly overstep the mark, and it just makes you feel a certain way. It's almost like you're about to sneeze, kind of thing as well. There's like a little bit of that. And what that immediately does is it just creates a little bit more space here. Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to achieve. Tongue being out of the way, larynx being out of the way, creating more space. Two more things: jaw and soft palate. So we've heard of the soft palate. Lift your soft palate, lift your soft palate, lift your soft palate. Now, the soft palate can also be manipulated. In most singers and performers, especially starting out, it's one of the hardest ones to train, and it's one of the hardest muscles to maneuver and manipulate and move around, and it has a mind of its own, and it can be a bit lazy. But you've all heard of lifting your soft palate, and there are a number of ways to achieve that. The really great one that I like to teach and get people to do is, think of Sir Ian McKellen. You shall not pass. You shall not pass. And as soon as you go into that old Shakespearean speaking voice here, it has to be on voice, and you get that cry as well, it just activates that area of your soft palate and lifts it ever so slightly. Or, for example, if I was to... Another one I like to do is, imagine I've just given you £500 to go and buy yourself anything of your choice. Go treat yourself this weekend. Go and get yourself something nice. What? Immediately that drops the breath in if you were taking a breath, but it just gives that internal surprise and lifts that soft palate. Again, creating more space. So what have we done so far? The larynx here is now dropped. So the larynx is now dropped. the tongue. This is the tongue, apparently. So this is the tongue. This is terrible. It's out of the way. And this is the soft palate. Yeah. So the larynx is depressed. Sad, really sad. The tongue is nice and forward. And this is open. You can see what we're doing. We're creating a huge vortex of space. So tongue out the way. That's up. That's down. Last but certainly not least, we're going to look at the jaw. This is connected as well. A lot of people protrude the jaw. I don't know if you're going to still be able to hear me with this when I'm moving my head around. A lot of people protrude the jaw and do this, or they hardly open their mouth. Yeah? Depending on where you're from in the world, I'm northern, so I hardly open my mouth, especially when I first moved to London. I started talking like that. Everything was like this all the time. I hardly done anything. And now, I don't have a great deal of movement like to Americans or Americans is what I can think of at the moment. The reason why they call it the Big Apple, it's not the reason why they call it Big Apple, but something that I think about is Big Apple. Imagine they've got an apple in their mouth. Everything is so over the top and over enunciated. It's so big. Apple in the mouth, it's huge. Which again, big space, big sound, more tone, more timbre. So yeah, as you can see, what we're doing here is creating more space here. So instead of protruding the jaw, we're just dropping the jaw ever so slightly. And I want you to think about having 2 to 3 finger space in the mouth at all times. So even when you're doing your, your breath work exercises, you can think about the space and having that space here. Depression of the larynx, and when you bring a little bit of sound into there, instead of it being, if we're doing it to a hum, that's really tinny and forward and down the nasal passage. A hum is down the nasal passage, but listen to the difference. You can notice the difference. There becomes way more space. It's still a hum and it's still going down the nasal passage and it's pharyngeal and forward and brassy. We're also going to now look at resonance. Now, this is an entirely different training in itself, but again, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but how we resonate and where we resonate from. Are we resonating from our back? Are we vibrating in the back? Are we vibrating in the chest with chest resonance? Are we resonating with nasality in the mask? Are we resonating with head voice? It's where you, as the vocalist, articulate the sound. Where do the vibrations come from? The resonator scale. I like that even better. The resonator scale. So is it head? And it's working out how to have a good balance of all of the resonances. And obviously, as we get a little bit higher, especially moving through our mixed voice, we want to incorporate more of that pharyngeal, bright, brassy sound to iron out that creased shirt. And this is what I always talk about when it comes to thinking about the voice. Everyone has creases in their voice. So if you imagine the voice being like a creased shirt, and our good vocal technique, hot iron, is what's going to go through all of this area, bumps in the road when it comes to breath work, the breath being consistent, midpoint larynx, tongue out of the way, all these things, these are all creases in the shirt. And with good technique, we're just ironing them all out. But essentially it is where you articulate the sound. If it is more heady, more chesty, more if it has more twang, has more brightness. So yeah, what is good vocal technique? We think of words like longevity, never losing my voice, being able to sing. I get this one a lot. Being able to sing with ease. And it's something that you just don't have to think about. I never have to think about my voice. People say to me, I just never have to think about what I'm doing in that area. When you come on board with a decent vocal coach, or any vocal coach for that matter, what you'll find is there will be a level of overwhelm. It'll feel like you're spinning a lot of plates, because if the vocal coach is good, yes, there will be a level of simplicity to help you understand, because that's good teaching. But at the same time, you will have to think about a number of things in terms of placement, breath, space, resonance, vowel modification, consonant modification, lots of different things, how to colour the sound, vibrato, belting safely and more effectively. Lots of stuff that you'll be having to think about. Then narrative in the song, singing the text, not the melody. Like you say, consonants and vowels. Lots of things to be thinking about. But body is very, very quick and good at picking things up and retaining information. So I promise you, baking all of these things into your practice will slowly but surely have you remembering those things, and you won't ever have to think about it again. And you can move on to the more fun stuff. Is training what you did, or is training what you do? Well, of course, training is what you do. We're never done. We never look in the mirror and say, do you know what? That's it, I'm finished. Done now. We are creatures of more. We crave more. We crave more education, more understanding. And we're all still learning. And the day and the moment that you stop and say, no, I've finished, I don't need to learn anymore, that's the time when you need to carry on. You learn about yourself and your voice. I'm still learning about my voice, my choices. My voice is maturing. I'm still learning about all those things. And you never ever stop learning. You think about the most successful performers, singers, artists, sports people out there. They all have one thing in common. Yes, they're all incredibly talented and all of the rest of it, but they all have one thing in common. They all have mentors. Mentors aren't necessarily people who are better than the artist or the performer, but through their experience, through challenging questions that they ask to the mentee or performer, they bring insight. They advise through expert advice and offer that up in a way that you may have heard this being said a million times over, but the way that that particular person, that particular mentor, coach, says that piece of advice or offers that guidance up at that particular time on that day and that date, it just really resonates and lands with you. And it works. All right, team, that is the 3 core principles of singing. I hope you found that really valuable and knowledgeable, and you took a bunch of insight from that.